Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a massive hybrid orchestral cinematic drone like what you just heard, and we're going to do it from scratch. Let's get started. This is going to be a fun video and I want you all to enjoy it. I want to show you, first of all, what kind of sound we're about to create. I said it's going to be a hybrid orchestral cinematic drone, and this is the sound that we're going to get to. Now, what I mean when I say hybrid is that this sound consists of not only synth drones, but also it consists of orchestral sounds. And this combination gives us this big cinematic sound. So what I'm going to use for this video in order to create this sound is pretty much just HALion and Iconica Sketch that comes free in Cubase, but you can also get it separately. So I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to show you all the techniques that I use to create this sound. So I've just loaded a new instance of HALion 7, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with an analog synth layer. So I'm going to click on analog synth, and straight away HALion gives me a virtual analog synthesizer. And now we're going to start building our sound. Please grab a cup of coffee because this is going to be loads of fun. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create this bass drone layer. So this is going to be the sound that is going to carry the low end. This is what hybrid sounds are all about. So we have the orchestral sounds, but in order to get this huge low end, we're using synth layers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the first oscillator and I'm going to start creating the mid-range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sawtooth wave. And I'm going to straight away go to the multi-oscillator and I'm going to add some more waves and detune it. And pan it so that it's really wide. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to add my subs, and I'm going to go here and activate my sub oscillator. Now one thing that I want to do straight away is that I want to make sure that my subs doesn't go over -12 dBs on my meters right here. So now I'm going to add the oscillator 1. And I'm mixing them, you know, so I make sure that I set up my sub first, because if my sub is too high, then everything is going to be overloaded. Everything is going to be drowned in this sub. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another oscillator, and I'm going to add oscillator 2. In this case, what I'm going to use is the sawtooth sync wave. And I use this wave to add some grit. Let me show you. And I'm going to turn it down 1 octave. So without it, beautiful. Now I want to make sure that this sounds like a drone. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I want to take care of the amplitude envelope. So I'm going to go here to my envelope and I'm going to make sure I'm in amp mode, and I'm going to make my release quite long because I want this to be nice and long when I release my key. Maybe even longer. That's good. And I'm going to make the attack a tiny bit slower. Now the next thing I want to do for my drone layer, which is going to be my bass, right, is I want to make sure that it's mono. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to my sound tab and I'm going to go to my voice management section. Now right here I'm going to set it to mono and I'm going to set the trigger mode to legato. So this makes my sound mono, which is what I want because I don't want to play chords with this. If I want, I can go back to my zone layer, go right here to my voice control section, and maybe add a tiny bit of glide. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to make this sound dynamic. I want this to sound like an evolving drone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my filter section here and I'm going to activate my filter. And now I'm going to play a little bit with the filter cutoff. And maybe I'm going to add a little bit of resonance. Let's listen to how it sounds. Nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my filter envelope. So I'm going to add a little bit of envelope here. And in order to see what's going to happen, I'm going to go to my envelopes again. But in this case, I'm going to go to the filter envelope. So let's make this a little bit slower with the attack. Here's where I want to be a little bit creative. So I want my drone layer for this synth to go like wow, and then when I release it, the filter goes lower in terms of cutoff. So let's see what we can do. I think I'm gonna go here for my sustain. So while I'm holding the note, I don't want this to be static. See, if I leave it like this, it stays like that. But if I make it like that with a sustain, that's good. And then for the release, I'm going to again make it a little bit longer. Very nice. Now what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of reverb to this layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my mixer here, and here's where we can add effects to all these different layers that we're going to build. So I'm going to go to my slots, and this is my analog synth. I'm going to rename this and call this synth drone. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add first a tiny bit of modulation with the bass chorus effect in HALion. Just a tiny bit, I don't need too much. And then I'm going to add a reverb. So in this case, I'm going to use the reverb in HALion. I'm going to use just the tail. I'm going to make sure that my mix is around 25%. Then I'm going to play with the shape a little bit. Now, one more thing that I want to do for fine-tuning this sound is I'm going to go here to my filter and I'm going to activate the cutoff velocity. So depending on how loud I play on my keyboard, it's going to trigger the envelope a little bit differently. See? Now, this is our first layer. The second layer I'm going to create is a very similar synth layer, but in this case, this layer is going to give me the movement. I'm going to have a little bit of a synth sequence here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here where we have this plus symbol. I'm not going to click on the plus symbol. I'm going to right click and choose from initial program analog synth again. So now we have this layer. I'm going to rename it and call it sequence. One very important thing that we should do now is make sure that we go and activate the same MIDI input. In my case, it's A1, so that we can play both layers from the same keyboard. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to solo this for a second. And you can see exactly the same story. We are in a virtual analog synth layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to my zone. I'm going to go and create a very similar sound. I'm going to go for a sawtooth. I'm going to activate the multi. I'm going to add a few more voices. I'm going to detune them. I'm going to activate the sawtooth sync oscillator here. I'm going to go down 1 octave. Very similar stuff. And the sub. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to MIDI modulation and this is where we can start adding our arpeggiators. In order to do this, we're going to use flex phrasers. So I'm going to activate it, and I'm going to go to my classic ARP preset, and I'm going to activate alternate 1. And now you will see that once I hit my key, I can hear the arpeggiator. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to quarter notes. And I can change the gate right here, so I can make the notes a little bit shorter. But I don't care about this for now because we're going to take care of this with the filter envelope. So let's go back to our zone now that we've set up our flex phraser, and I'm going to go to my filter. And I'm going to activate my filter again. I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to add a little bit of resonance, a little bit of distortion, and we want to add quite a bit of envelope amount. Now I'm going to go to my envelopes, and I'm going to set up my filter envelope like this. Now, if I want, I can make it a little bit more aggressive with the resonance. You know what? I want to make these repeats a little bit faster so I can have this urgency kind of feeling. So I'm going to go back to my MIDI modulator, and I'm going to make this 8th notes. Beautiful. Now, what I want to do this is I want to have a little bit of control for this sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the cutoff frequency, and I'm going to learn CC. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to move any controller on my setup. I can use the mod wheel, I can use the expression. In this case, I'm going to use the mod wheel. And now you can see that I'm controlling the cutoff. Here's one thing, I don't want this to go all the way up because that doesn't do much for the sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my minimum maybe around here. So I'm going to right click again and say set minimum, and then I'm going to go to the higher point. I think here should be the maximum, so I'm going to set this to maximum. So now you can see minimum on my controller is right there on the cutoff, and maximum is right there. So now I can get this kind of sound. Last thing that I want to do is I want to go to the mixer and add a little bit of reverb to this one as well. I'm going to hold the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on Windows, and I'm going to drag the reverb on my sequence. I'm going to add a little bit less reverb, and maybe I'm going to adjust the room size because this might make the sound a little bit blurry. Now, here's another thing that I might want to do. And again, I'm trying to show you a few techniques in order for you to be creative and create the sound that you have in your mind, right? So maybe I don't want this sequence to be playing all the time. Maybe I just want to introduce it whenever I want. So how can we do this? It's actually very, very simple. All I need to do is go here to my edit page, and then try and ask yourself questions. What do I want to achieve? I want to control the volume of this sequence. Okay, so what should I look for? I'm going to go to my amplifier section. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to go to amp modulation, and I'm going to choose level, because that's what we want to modulate, the level. And then I'm going to choose how to modulate the level. And one very easy way to do this and be very expressive is to use aftertouch. So depending on how much you press the key down, we're going to get more level. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to activate aftertouch. And I'm going to set up my amount right here. So I'm going to turn the level all the way down now. And let's see. And now it's time to go to the orchestral part of the sound. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this plus symbol right here, and I'm going to get my media bay. So I'm going to jump straight into Iconica Sketch, and I'm going to use the bases first. So I'm going to load the bases, and now I'm again going to make sure that we have the bases on the same MIDI channel. Straight away, I'm going to populate the rest of the slots. I'm going to click plus, Iconica Sketch, and I'm going to load the cello. I'm going to load an instance of the violas. And now we're going to get into this Bram kind of sound. I'm going to load trombones and horns. And now let's start fine-tuning the sound. I'm going to start introducing each element one by one. Let's start with the basses. I'm going to go to my macro page because, of course, this is an instrument and it has its own macro page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to legato. Let's listen to them. What I'm going to do straight away for the contrabasses is I'm going to go to the mixer and I'm going to add a little bit of EQ. The reason why I do this is because these hybrid layers, these orchestral layers, are going to give us this kind of realism and this hybrid sound. So I want to make sure that the top end of the strings is right there and it's pronounced. So I'm going to go to the EQ and I'm going to add the Studio EQ 24 and I'm going to add a tiny bit of shell filter. And if my basses are too loud, I'm going to bring them down a notch. Okay, let's go to my cello, and I'm going to do a very similar thing. I'm going to go to my macro page, and I'm going to activate legato here. Also gives you this really beautiful airy quality. Violas, again, I'm going to go here. I just want a tiny bit of the violas. I don't need too much. I'm going to go to the macro page, add the legato, but for the violas, I have to go to my MIDI page and make sure we drop them one octave lower. So I'm going to go plus 12. If I want a little bit more level, I don't want them to overpower the sound, so this is enough for me. Then we're going to go to the trombones, and here we're going to have some fun. Let's add the trombones, and for this one, again, I'm going to go for legato. Now, for the trombones, I'm going to be a little bit creative. I'm going to go to the mixer. I'm going to pan them a little bit to the right. And I'm going to add a distortion plugin here. And you might be thinking, Dom, what are you doing? But trust me, for this hybrid sound, it's going to be really nice. So I'm going to add a little bit of distortion. See how this sound becomes so modern and cinematic? And then we have the horns. So I'm going to add the horns now. And again, I'm going to go to my macro page, legato. And for the horns, I'm going to pan them a little bit to the left. And I'm going to add a tape saturator plugin here. So I'm going to add the tape, I'm going to add a little bit of drive to make those horns a little bit bigger. And from here on, it's all about fine-tuning your sounds. So as you can see, I'm here in my mixer. I can start fine-tuning the levels. And of course, if I want to give the sound a little bit of coherence, I can go to my output and I can add a nice reverb at the very end. Just don't go overboard with this, just a tiny bit. Again, only tail for my sound. And I'm going to use the shape here, just a tiny bit of mix. What I want you to remember out of this video is that if you have a sound in your mind, what you need to do is think, how can I get to this sound? Is it amplitude? Is it filter? Is it a reverb? Is it an effect? Is it panning? Is it layering? Every single time there's a way to get to the sound that you want. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you create sounds like this and I can't wait to hear them. Let us know in the comments down below what you'd like to see next in Production Lab, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.